All right. This is going to be about what's true. And also a bunch of other stuff. Let's start like this. I have two statements here, written in purple. Mr. Tony's name is Mr. Tony. Where would you place that? Where would you put it?
True.
You put it as true? How do you know?
Because that's what we call you by.
Does that make it my name? Nope. What would you say?
It's not your name because it's Mr. Tony, but your real name is like secret.
No, that is my name.
No, like your first name.
Oh, no, that's fine. Because if I were to tell you that my first name is Justin, was my name Justin?
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's still my name, even if it doesn't include my last name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So saying that Mr. Tony is my name, even if that doesn't include my first name, still works, right? Okay, so it's true, isn't it? Yeah, that's pretty easy. That's an easy one to start with. That's true. But how do you know it's true? I know you do know it's true, but how do you know it's true? Yes, ma'am. Say that again. You told us. And would I know? Yeah. So you had an expert opinion. How else might you know? Yes, sir.
Would the fact that it was stated in the sentence make it true at all?
Possible. It's logical that if Mr. Tony is called Mr. Tony in the sentence, wouldn't it therefore make sense that that is his name? Yes. Although, is it possible that I might be referencing this person by the name that you know him by, and that's not actually his name? Is it possible that I'm lying about my name?
Yeah.
How could I prove that my name is my name if you doubt me? Sir?
You have several documents.
There's documentation. My diploma is up here. I have a certificate of merit, and they all spell my name the same way. That's pretty strong what? Evidence. I love that word, evidence. So what things make something true? Evidence is definitely part of it. Evidence helps to make something true, right? But there's something else to it as well. Let's look at that one. That says 397 plus 1,134 is a positive number. Do you know what number that is? Not off the top of your head. Well, some of you might, but not off the top of your head usually. But do you know that it's a positive number?
Yeah.
You know that's true, don't you? A positive number plus a positive number is another positive number. Right? You're not sure, you could probably calculate what the number is. You could do the evidence, gather evidence by doing the calculation. But you don't need to do the calculation, do you?
No.
So that means that something being true isn't just about the evidence. There's something else involved. What else is there?
Citation.
Citations. An expert said that it's a positive number. Does that make it true? Not necessarily. Even experts can be wrong sometimes. They're trustworthy, but that's not enough. Yes, sir?
A unified knowledge on how stuff like that works. Like,
So lots of people agree.
yeah, lots of people agreeing that positive is positive.
Is that why it's positive? It's because lots of people agreed on it, so we decided that's how it is? Or is it that way regardless of how people agree? What if we took a vote in here, and 9 out of 10 people, 90% of the class, said that no, that's a negative number? Would they be right?
No.
But they agree. Does that make them right? No. The truth has something to do with something else. Yes, ma'am. If I drop this pen, what's going to happen?
It's going to hit.
It's good.
You've made some guesses, right? Do you know that those things are going to happen?
Predictions.
Yeah.
But you're very certain, aren't you? You don't know for sure. Something else might happen. But do you have any reason to believe that it's going to fly up?
No.
You don't.
It could.
Have you seen any evidence that it isn't going to fly up?
No.
Yes.
Have you seen any evidence that it's going to fly down?
Yes.
Yet. I mean, we might do the experiment and see the evidence, but have you seen it yet? but you already know that it's not going to do that. Why not? Yes, ma'am?
Background knowledge?
A little bit. But how are you using that background knowledge? Yes, sir?
Well, the reason why you know it won't like fall upwards is because you've done stuff similar to dropping a marker and it's never.
And is the marker any different from those other things? Is anything different than when you've seen stuff fall before? No, right? This is an object like any other object. The world is the world like the world has been. Therefore, logically speaking, there's no reason to expect it would perform any differently. Right? You know what positive 1 plus positive 1 is, right? It's positive 2. In fact, you know that all small numbers add up to positive numbers. Is there any reason to think that these positive numbers are special or different? Therefore, even before you know what this total is, you know it's going to be a positive number. Because instead of relying on evidence, you have relied on your reasoning, your logic. So what two things does it take to make something true? Evidence well reasoned. I could present you with evidence. This is a marker. This marker is blue. Therefore, the sky is blue. Right? But I presented evidence. This is a marker. And this marker is blue. Therefore, the sky is blue. No? Why not?
Because it has no correlation with the sky at all.
You're right. My reasoning is bad. Ultimately, the statement that I made has a lot of truth to it, but the reasoning was bad. It doesn't have to do with the evidence, or it misuses the evidence. Does that make sense? So these two things must go together. You must be able to say, those are your documents. Your documents contain your name. There's no reason to think that they wouldn't contain your name if they're said the same way over and over again. Therefore, that's a really good idea that that is your name. Or you can say, well, look, the name of the guy is in the sentence that defines his name. Of course that's his name. We good so far? So both of these statements are true. Are they perfectly true? Are they 100% true? Do they have all of the evidence that you could ever collect?
No.
Is there no doubt at all? What if I forged those documents, and I've been lying to you, and I lied to my employer, and I've hired this woman to pretend like she's my mother when you call her, and then ask her my name? What if I've done all of that? Is it possible?
Yes.
Is it likely?
No.
No. It's so very, very unlikely that the doubt is teeny, so small you might as well not even consider it there. Right? Like a piece of poison, so little you wouldn't even notice it. Can't hurt you. So it's not 100% true, right? But it's like 99.99999% true. And that's kind of the idea about true, is that things aren't ever here. They're never perfectly true. But within this range, that's true enough. Make sense? If enough evidence and enough reason is there that the claim isn't special enough to go beyond it, well, that's a very different thing. What if I were to say to you, actually, my name is not Mr. Tony. I am Bertrand III, King of Prussia! Prussia. It's an old empire. That doesn't exist anymore. Do you believe me?
No.
But I said so, and I would know, wouldn't I? So that's evidence, isn't it?
Yes.
False evidence.
It is evidence. It may not be reliable evidence, but it's evidence. Is it enough evidence to convince you of such a big claim?
No.
No. This brings me to another point, and I hope that you note this. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Say that I claimed that I could throw a baseball through the atmosphere all the way to Mars, and it got caught in the orbit around Mars. Is it possible?
I mean,
I mean, yeah, but how possible are we talking about? Like, basically not, right? So basically not that the idea is insane. It's ludicrous to say that that's true. But what if it really was true? How much evidence would you need from me?
A picture.
I would have to not just provide pictures, because Photoshop, y'all, Photoshop's a thing. I wouldn't just have to provide evidence, scientific laws that demonstrate why that's even physically possible. I wouldn't have to reproduce it over and over again for you with multiple people studying it to make sure I'm not somehow performing a weird magic trick, right? Like, the amount of evidence and reasoning required to demonstrate that one tiny thing is true is huge.
You only need a polygraph.
Because it's so unlikely. Because you know so many other things about the way the universe works. And you know that ain't how the universe works. Right? We all kind of have this feeling already, don't we? I'm not blowing your minds yet. I'm not telling you something that's revolutionary. You already knew that those things were true. I'm explaining to you how they are true. Why they are true. Because we're dealing with easy examples here. But in your work as journalists, you will encounter examples that are a little bit hard to figure out. When you're reading the news, you may encounter statements of truth that you don't really believe all the way, or you think that maybe that it's not right, or lots of different people who would know say very different things. And you've got to try and figure it out. But what's the standard for what makes something true? Yes, ma'am?
It's gotta have evidence.
It's got to have evidence and reason. And if it's a big claim that seems unlikely, they need to provide a lot of evidence and really clear reasoning. And if they don't believe it. So what's false then? If truth is there is evidence and there is reason, what is false?
No evidence and no reason.
No evidence and no reason, or bad reason. Yeah, the opposite. Somebody give me an example of a statement that is false. Yes, ma'am.
The sky is blue. It's actually not.
Well, we're going to jump right into that, are we? All right. You say that, oh, that's not magnetic. I have learned something today. You're saying that this is, I'm going to draw it instead. This is false. The sky is blue is false. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it's false. But then sometimes it's true, isn't it? I'm talking about. So in that sense, is it true sometimes that the sky is blue? So why is it over here?
Because it's not always true.
So
It's in the
it's
middle.
here and there?
It's an opinion.
Well,
You have to like. It's
Is it an opinion that the sky is blue?
No.
No, it is not. Because if I were to go outside right now, could I collect all of the evidence and reasons to believe that the sky is blue? Is it raining right now? I haven't seen the sky all morning. Could I say it's cloudy outside if I went outside to see? If I spent the next year collecting evidence about the color of the open air, would I be able to understand what color it is?
No.
Yeah, I could collect lots of evidence, couldn't I? I can use that evidence in a reasonable way, couldn't I? So I can make a true or false statement. It's not an opinion. It's not about how I feel about it. It is blue or it isn't blue. But you make the good point. Sometimes it is blue, but sometimes it's not blue. So it's not really true or false in this sense, but somewhere between. Where would you put it? Here?
No.
There?
No.
There?
Yeah.
So it's blue half the time and not blue the other half the time, or we're not sure when it's blue and when it's not?
Yeah.
We know.
I mean, when is it not blue?
Nighttime.
Nighttime.
Nighttime,
Sunset.
sunset,
Sunrise.
sunrise. Anytime there's precipitation.
Sometimes people like to call it periwinkle.
When I say to you, you guys, the sky is blue. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not quite totally uncertain or unknown or mysterious, is it? You understand what I mean, and you grant me the truth of what I've said. It's not quite over here. Because you don't know if it's blue right now, you don't know how I mean that exactly, you understand that sometimes it's not, so it's not quite all the way, right? But it's a little bit more true than it isn't. Does that make sense? So you can place that statement sort of on a gradient between true and false here. We'll come back to what you were saying in a minute. Hold that thought. Let's take a look at that one. Where would you put fairies are real on this line? Yes, ma'am.
False,
Why?
because there's no evidence or reason that it's
But I believe in fairies. I believe in fairies. Right? Yeah, you would say there's no reason and no evidence, right? That makes it false. Yeah, you put it over here. Now, is it possible that there are tiny humans with wings that have magic powers that have eluded all of human civilization for the last 10,000 years? It's possible. Is it likely? No! And if you were to believe it, it would have to be such extraordinary evidence, wouldn't it? Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't it be an opinion then? Because some people believe that it is and some people don't.
I love that you keep including this. We're going to wait until we talk about this one. Then we're going to talk about the 2 points you've made about each of these. You have very good insights. What about the cake? The cake is not a lie. The cake is delicious. Where do we put that on this line? Yes, ma'am.
Opinion? It's not on the line, but it is an opinion.
It is an opinion, isn't it? So we can't put it on this line. We need to do something else. We need to make a new dimension to our line. You see how before we went from either being true or false, and then we've got this whole dimension in between, right? Well, now we've got this other side of it too. And down here, that's bias. It's the stuff you care about. That's a heart down there, if you can't see it. It's our bias. Cake is delicious. Is it true?
Sometimes. All the time. It's an opinion. It's a ball.
Time out.
If you think
If it can't go on this line because it's an opinion, can it be true?
yes.
It's an opinion.
No. To you it can.
To you, it can, but does that make it true? Is something feeling true? Fairies are real. I feel that fairies are real. I believe in them. Does that make it true?
No.
What makes it true?
Evidence or reasoning.
What evidence or reasoning can you give me that cake is delicious?
7 years ago, science performed something where they
Now, hang on. I like that. Someone always does the answer, and it means they're well-read, and I appreciate that answer. Let me explain the difference between something being delicious and something having a sugar reaction in your brain. It's the difference between, that's tasty when I eat one piece of candy, and, oh my god, I think I might puke after I've eaten 700 pieces of candy. The same chemical reaction is taking place, but it's a very different experience, isn't it? The deliciousness is the internal feeling. It's your feeling and thought that comes from you only. It doesn't exist in the world. Maybe there's some piece of your brain that we don't understand that could provide evidence, but as soon as we crack your brain open to look inside, well, we've kind of messed it up, haven't we? You see what I mean? This is what makes you subjective. You know this word subjective? It's the opposite of objective. Subjective means you are a subject, a person. Objective makes you an object. You're part of the world. Evidence exists out here. Reasoning is demonstrated out here. It doesn't rely on you thinking or believing any of it. You may look at this and go, That marker didn't really fall. I think it was just lights and mirrors. That's a hologram, you say. And you might believe that, but you are wrong. It is just simply wrong. The evidence is there, the reasoning is there. The marker fell. That's a really good brand of marker. Can I provide you evidence? I can say, the marker reliably marks. Can I give evidence for that? Can I say that, therefore, it is a good marker? I can't say that's true. Can I claim it? Can I say that's important to me? Can I say that's significant for you? You should think this way. Can I say all those things? Certainly. Does that make any of them true? No. It makes them my bias. Is that a bad thing? No. In fact, it can't be a bad thing. Like, is it a bad thing that the marker is blue? Is it a bad thing that I punched a dude in the face?
Yeah.
Is that true?
No.
No.
They might be.
You believe that it is a bad thing that I punched a person in the face. But if you say to yourself, why do you believe that? Well, because you shouldn't hurt people. Well, shouldn't, that's not a true fact either, is it? That's what? That's your bias. So why shouldn't you? Well, you shouldn't because, and any reason that you can think of next isn't about truth, is it? All biases come from biases. All truth comes from evidence, because truth is just the word we use to mean something with lots of evidence and clear reasoning. But evidence and clear reasoning cannot be your thoughts and feelings. They can't be your beliefs. That's what belief means. When you're a subject of the world, when you're deciding what is or isn't meaningful to you, when you're deciding what does and doesn't matter, you're making a choice as a person outside of the world of objects, outside of the objective world. You're not being objective. But no one can be objective because no one isn't a human. You get me? The things you believe in, the things you love, they don't have to do with true and false. They can't be right or wrong. But the other thing is that this can't be good or bad. It can only be good or bad when you bring it next to your biases, next to what you already think good and bad are, and why you think so. Yes, sir?
Didn't you say that we should avoid using things like horrifying in headlines unless it is unobjectively, like everyone would agree that it is horrifying?
Yes and no. So let's pull that apart. When I tell you that you need to choose the stories with value, is the value a fact of the story? Yes? Because what's a lot of people?
Majority.
A majority. So if 51% of the Earth isn't affected by something, it doesn't have magnitude?
Yeah.
Really? Because that means that nothing has magnitude. What story could you possibly tell about half the planet? Yeah, you see what I mean? And when you go to try and tell a story like that, if you can imagine one, it's not very interesting, is it? So it's not really what we mean by valuable. Because what counts as a large crowd kind of depends on what you're talking about, doesn't it? And that might vary from person to person, from writer to writer, from reader to reader. Which makes it what? Not objective. How close is proximity? How interesting does a person have to be to count as human interest? How much conflict must there be before you have drama in your story? You see what I'm getting at? If I have these two stories and I can only print one of them, which one do I pick? I pick the one with more value, but according to whom is there more value? Who decided that that's the way you do it? A person did. A subject did. That is a subjective way of looking. You see what I mean? It's unavoidable. Does that mean that everyone does it well? Does that mean that some people aren't being tricky when they do it? Aren't being intentionally misleading? You see? It gets hard now, but there's no objective measurement that we can use to decide this was a good way to use your subjective mind to write something valuable to me, and this was a bad way, because good and bad ways are biases. We can debate about it, we can argue about it, agree or disagree, understand or don't understand, but they can't be right, and they can't be wrong. They are simply beyond those things. They can be based on right or wrong things. I can say to you, for example, that I really like these shoes. Because I know these shoes, I've had lots of time and experience with these shoes. I can say these shoes are comfortable. I can say that I wear them every day. I can say that I really appreciate the way they look. That's lots of reasons, right? They look this way. He does wear them most of the time, no matter what his outfit is, because he doesn't know how to dress himself. He's a 30-year-old man, right? That's based on a lot of things that are true, isn't it? But that doesn't make my enjoyment of them right. It just makes it my enjoyment of them. He does enjoy them. You can agree or disagree. See how this works? A lot of people take this and stop there. They say, well, there's no such thing as truth then. There's no such thing. There's no right. There's no wrong. Everyone just thinks whatever they think, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and there's no helping it. Oh, well. But that doesn't... You feel it, right? You feel it here in your biases. You know that isn't correct. You know that doesn't settle. Because there is evidence for stuff that's not in your head. This is my name. That is a positive number. But I can't use evidence and reasoning to tell you why I think you're valuable people and worth attention. I just have to convince you. I can convince you by being on the side of truth. But there's no amount of truth that will actually make it real to you, make you feel that way. You see this a lot when you get proselytized to, right? When believers or non-believers want to change your mind about some spiritual matter. It's kind of pointless, isn't it? Right? You can make a point about what is or isn't a factual statement, and if the truth is important to your values, or certain facts are important to your values, then maybe you will shift the way you think about your values. But the values aren't things that you can assail directly without being convincing. I'm trying to convince you of something. I'm trying to convince you of the value of bias. Without it, nothing matters. Without it, nothing is interesting. Because what's interesting is a biased opinion. See that? Why have I bothered to tell you this? Yes, ma'am?
Because it's just important to know this stuff, whether or not you're a journalist.
Yeah. It's really important for journalism. You have a responsibility to get this right. You have a responsibility to pull your own personal biases aside and to be biased in support of your audience when you make a decision. You have all of the responsibility to make sure that what you're talking about has evidence and reasoning. That we stay here on this track. Excuse me. That sometimes, yes, you will say things that you're not 100% sure about, that you can't provide all of the evidence for, but it seems really clear that this is the case. Because we gotta go to deadline right now. We're gonna say some things that are a little on the edge here, that haven't been all as true as they could possibly be. That's okay. But we don't go out there. We're gonna say some things, we're gonna organize our information in a way that is in support of people. But we're not going to let it creep all the way into just being about what we feel and what we think, even if we think that that's what's best for them. Does that make sense? We will use our bias to direct our information, to say what is and isn't a good thing to write about, what is or isn't the best story to include, what is or isn't the best information to use to organize our nut graph, and so on. We'll use that bias to tell our stories, because without it, it would just be a list of meaningless facts. The only thing that humans care about is this. This helps us to navigate through the world. It can be a foundation for our beliefs, but these are the things that make us feel. If you don't care about it, are you going to read it? If you don't care in your life, are you living? Not in the way we mean it, right? Not in the way that it means something. This is so important. It's not a bad thing to have beliefs, to have opinions. You can't help it. It's inevitable. It is a problem if you confuse these two things. Because you will believe things, and you will love things so much that it can be terrifying, almost hurtful, to consider that they may not be true. Someday, when someone tells you that they love you, you're going to want to believe them. You're going to need to believe them. And if there's any part of you that doubts it, if there's any part of you that says, I don't know, I don't think so, I'm not convinced, I just don't feel it, you might want to try and grab your triangle and bend the corners together to be like, well, it's true because they gave me gifts. It's true because there's this. I have this evidence. I have this reasoning. You have to do this. It has to be this way. You are just confused about how much you love me. And that's a little bit dramatic, but have you ever seen an adult do something like that? You see it, right? And you can look at this and go, that's a crazy person way to behave. And you're not going to be happy. Even if you get what you think you want is poison. Because you've trapped yourself. You've trapped yourself in a loop where things are true because I want them so badly. That's what makes them true, and that's why I want them so badly, because they're true, because I want it. And if you can't tell the difference between this huge gap, you're going to be forever unable to really feel that anything is meaningful, because nothing will be true. Because you've mistaken what those things are. You'll say, there's no meaning in life, because where is it? How do I measure it? How do I count it? What's the evidence for my meaning in life? You're not going to find any. There will never be some. And so you'll say, I have no meaning. I have a meaningless life. And you'll feel that way, and that will be true to you. And that it will feel true. And you'll also say, no, I don't think that there was a moon landing. I don't think that the government's full of lizard people. And how could I ever convince you otherwise if you think that all bad things are ultimately the responsibility of some evil, villainous force that's gone unseen, and only you are the smart and brave one capable of opposing it? Because you need to feel important, because you need to feel like you have some control over terrible things that happen in the world, because you feel so deeply hurt by the bad things that happen in the world. How could I possibly convince you otherwise if you're already there? If you're already in a place where things become true because you want them? Does that make sense? It can be scary to force these things apart, to say, I'll never know, I'll never be certain that anyone loves me. That can feel terrifying. But do you feel it? Then you feel it. It doesn't have to be true. It can be meaningful. It doesn't matter if the world is real or not. It doesn't matter if we all woke up yesterday pre-programmed to believe that we've lived the last decade of our lives. It doesn't matter, because I care about the things I care about. I believe in the things that I believe. I question them, I doubt them, I look for evidence to see what's true. I rely on the truth for what I believe, but I can never believe something and therefore it is true. It might creep this way, but it never crosses that line, you see. It never becomes objective. It's just what you think. That is enough. It's not anything less. It's always what it was. I gone way off topic here?
No, keep going.
Yeah.
My last point. Sometimes you're the bad guy.
The end.
In fact, a lot of times you're the bad guy. But nobody who is the bad guy thinks they're the bad guy.
Who's to decide?
You're to decide. I'm to decide. You have a responsibility to decide. It's not enough just to be informed, to know what's true and say, all right, it's true, whatever. There's a human component to us. There's a human component to reporting. You have to decide which is the best story, which is the best quote, which is the best photo, design, headline, blank, the best whatever. You're never not dealing with bias. You have to deal with bias. Your relationships work the same way. You have an obligation to judge people. You must. That doesn't mean you have to judge them harshly or selfishly or non-empathetically. You should, I believe, and I have no proof for this, I think you should. You should empathize with everyone, with all people. You should be informed about the evidence and the reason what is true. And you should use those things to judge what's right and decide what's good. But it means you have to judge yourself. And when you judge yourself, you've got to rely on something that isn't already your bias. Because if you say, I think that I'm a good person, I don't bully anyone, that person deserved that repeated unwanted treatment that I gave them. Therefore, it is good. I am good. Wait, I should self-examine myself. Am I good? Do I feel good? I do feel good, therefore I'm good.
No.
Uh-oh. You gotta keep going back up to this pool. Be like, what would make a good person good? A good person wouldn't bully someone, right? Or it wouldn't be good to bully someone. Lots of good people do bully people. Good on average. This was bad, right? Lots of people do really bad things. I've done really bad things that I am ashamed of in my life. You have too. We're human beings. We grow and we learn how to be better. We think there are things about us that aren't very nice or great or flattering, and we hide them. And that's a good thing sometimes, to a degree, depending. You know what I'm saying? And it's complicated, isn't it? It gets complicated really fast. What is or isn't right, how I should or shouldn't act, whether or not I should do this or should do that, and what do I even want from things, and how do I know what's right? Who's to decide? You are. You're to decide. In fact, you have to. Because when you let other people decide, you let them choose for you. Especially in a democracy. When you let other people decide what's right, or what's best, you give up your say in that. And the world will look pretty bad if no one cares about how you feel about it. You've got to make a decision. You've got to get involved. Which is why it's so important to speak with empathy, to act empathetically. I may hate what you have to say. I may despise the things that you want to happen. But I still have to, in some way, love you. Not actually like you, but empathize and understand why you feel the way you do. And just because I empathize with you doesn't mean that I have to let you do whatever you want. It still means I have to stop you. But if I can, I'll try and do it in a humane way. And if I can't, I will stop you, because I do also care about all these people you want to hurt. Does that make sense? Okay. That was my final thought on the matter. That got weird. But I hope it's helpful. I hope this wasn't just a, teacher is talking forever kind of thing. Do you all have any questions for me? Have I fried your brain?
I enjoyed this conversation.
You
It became less of a conversation at the end, which I don't feel super great about, but I think we'd be here all day if we just did discussion. I'm gonna turn this off now.